for me, for all who've been, I know for all of you who work in the sanctuary team, for all of you who are parishioners here, who care about what we're doing, it was quite a time. I'm going to start right in because I want everyone to have time to tell you about their experience, and the time will go quickly. I'm just going to give you an overview. We went to Brownsville, Texas, McAllen, Texas, and Matamoros, Mexico in the middle of January. And if you don't know where those are, I have the same map of Texas as last time. The very bottom tip, you see Brownsville, and directly across from Brownsville is where Matamoros is. We went as part of the urban-suburban group, representatives of the large Episcopal churches around the country. And you will remember perhaps that last year in Advent, that group went to El Paso. It was deans and rectors of large churches around the country. It's a peer group that our dean, Steve Thomason, is part of. It's not an organization, it's not a committee, it's a peer group. If they were all local, they'd meet at a bar and have a beer and talk about stuff. But they care, right? Because they recognize we're big churches, but we're not at the border. The only church at the border that was big, that's not right at the border, is the cathedral in Houston. And some leadership from the Houston Cathedral are the folks who have helped us establish relationships and kind of get things cooking a little bit down at the border on behalf of the churches that are far flung. So with that in mind, after that trip, everyone felt like, yes, we want to be involved, we want to have some action. What can we do? And we thought about it, but nobody was in charge of it, so guess what happened? However, the dean of the cathedral in Richmond put one of his staff people on it to say, could you get a small committee together and to get some legs on this, and let's see what our next step is going to be. So Josh Rocket from Richmond called a committee together. He called me because we had sat together on the bus. Be careful who you sit with on the bus. Next thing you know, you're on the committee trying to figure out what's going to happen next. So what happened next is that a very small group of us, 4 or 5 of us, Josh and myself and Simone and Michael from the cathedral in Houston, got talking about what are we going to do, how's this going to happen. We decided we had to go back down. The folks in Houston had some really good relationships down at Brownsville, McAllen. And so we went there in the summer, and I came back and spoke to you about that. I will tell you that this trip was very similar in form and the things we saw, except in placement, which my colleagues will tell you about. But the difference was the small group over the months of the autumn spoke with a larger group, a larger planning group that encompassed people who had been assigned by their rectors from some of these bigger churches. And so there were some 30 of us down there at this trip in January to have a broader group see what's going on, see what groups are doing what, and think about what we might do with our resources and our people all around the country to have some kind of helpful impact down there, augmenting and being part of what the people who live there and live it and know the culture and live the hardships already know what's going on. That's what this trip was, and so that's where we went. This is the Rio Grande, right at the end of that Texas map. That's what's there, that's what people are trying to get across. In some ways, it's a lovely way to be, but it's hard to look at it and not think about what's happening within it. To cross over into Mexico, it's easy for us. We go back and forth with our blue-covered passports and our mostly white faces from the group that I was with, not completely, but mostly. And of course, for people trying to come across this way who are trying to seek asylum, they're not getting across. So there we are going. I'm going to run through some slides so you can have a picture of it in your head of what it looks like over there. But the short version is, when we were there in the summer, there was a tent city at the foot of the bridge on the Matamoros side. And those were people waiting to come across to try to get an asylum hearing. And people were coming across chunks at a time during the day, with asylum-seeking papers, and they were sent to the respite center in McAllen, Texas, where Sister Norma runs quite an operation of helping people figure out their next steps. However, right when we were there in August, the migrant protection protocols went into play, and that meant nobody got across until they were granted asylum. So I'm just going to say to you, of the people seeking asylum, fewer than 1% are getting asylum. As soon as that went into play, nobody could come across. So now the tent city on the opposite side of the bridge, opposite us that is, on the Mexico side, is a tent city of more than 2,000 people living in tents on the concrete at the base of the bridge and then over into the woods. Many have tents, many have lean-tos. They are eking out survival as best they can. If they get up on the bridge and they get a paper that says, okay, you'll have an asylum hearing, it will be months away, and they are just languishing there while they wait for hearings with papers they don't understand, to go when they have, if they have the luck of having connected with someone. And there are lots of lawyers down there who are volunteers who are helping people figure it out. They come across for their hearing, which is in a tent. It's in a tent with a judge who's nowhere near here, nowhere near where these people are, on a video. Spectators or audience, whatever we might be, are not allowed in the tents. It's like a kangaroo court, unlike the way America does hearings with open courtrooms. They go in, some have their lawyer with them, some don't. It's hard for them to understand what's going on. It's hard for the judge to understand and see them well because they're in a tent. This is the hearing. At the end of the hearing, they come back out and they have to go right back across, whether they are granted a second hearing, which would be the good news, and that would be several months hence, or not. This is what's going on at the border. I'm going to just run through a few photos, but I want to tell you that that's what we're here to tell you. That's what's going on at the border. There are people there trying to help them. There are organizations that are bringing food. There are medical people. There are law people. But until the laws themselves change, there is great humanitarian crisis that we have created and that we could help with better policies. We can argue all day about what those policies should be, but I don't think there's a person here who thinks they shouldn't be better. So with that, I'm just going to click through some pictures for you. This is Dee looking over onto the concrete part of where tents are, and behind her is the woods of the tent city. And this is what it looks like. So you've got your concrete, you've got your bridge that you saw us walking across, and within a 2-minute walk, this is where you are. We were there on a fabulous day. It wasn't terribly hot, it wasn't raining, it wasn't windy. We are told that usually it's windy and you have to cover your face because it's so dusty. Of course, when it's hot down there, you know, it can be 110, 115 degrees. And when it rains, it's a sea of mud. It runs everywhere and it's slippery. Dumpsters, tents on sides of hills, tents in parking lots. People have set up little stoves. Team Brownsville, the team that brings food and supplies, the team that we worked with when we were down there, brings rice, brings beans, and people have been very, very industrious and have set up camp as if you just showed up in the woods and had to make a life, which is what has happened. This is George looking into the medical trailer that they have there. It's a small setup, and there are volunteers who take turns. Laundry, barbed wire. Tienda numero 4. There are stores set up within this encampment so that when Team Brownsville brings big bags of rice this big and supplies over there, they disperse them out among the stores. And each store has one of the migrants who are there being in charge of that store to parcel these things out. They are free of charge, but to keep it rationed, essentially, sensibly, and to let the people who are bringing stuff to the stores know what's needed and what people are asking for. Everything from food to soap to you name it. When we get there, they're happy to see us and they're talking to us. The man who is back to us is Mark from Team Brownsville. He was our leader. We met at the bus station. He gave us the lowdown, and off we went. In the evening, when we brought food, it was in wagons. They bring wagons of supplies. So our job was to help parcel out what's going on. The night we were going to serve food was a rare night for them, that the food they had planned did not show up. It has only happened once before. In a mad scramble, they ordered a whole lot of pizza and had it brought over in cabs across the bridge. And so they needed cash for the cab drivers and the pizzas. So we all emptied our pockets, and a lot of pizza came over. And I mean a lot, enough to feed more than 1,000 people at a time. But this is how the operation works. And this is what it looks like when you're walking around there. And these are children who come up to you and tell you things and ask you things. And if you speak a little bit of Spanish, it's wonderful. And if you don't, we use a lot of sign language. But everyone is excited to have us there. We met with ranchers, because that was the other side of it. So before I move into the rancher part, I just want to say that when you're talking with people who are waiting there, there's a sense of, is this voluntourism? Is this just me getting a good look at what's going on and then I get to go home? And I asked Team Brownsville about that. They're bringing food every day. And I said, we want to help you. We don't want to get in your way, and we feel a little weird. And they told us that the people who are there in the tent city want people to see them. Because if no one comes, then they feel like nobody's thinking about them, nobody cares, and nothing's going to happen. So as much as there is a sense of, I'm walking through here, I'm not really any help, they don't need my hands today. It matters that I'm there with my eyes and my heart, that I'm talking to people. The first gentleman that I came in contact with was just sitting in a chair. I just went up to him, I said, I have terrible Spanish, so I said haltingly, hello, we care about you. Have you been here many months? And he said, I've been here for 8 months, but I have a hearing tomorrow. And I asked him his name. His name was Eduardo. I've been praying for him since, and I told him that I would. And so you may too, and for all the others whose names we don't know. That's what the endeavor is like. I'm trying to pick up the pace here. I want you to know we do meet with the Border Patrol and with ranchers, because it's an entire ecosystem down there. And before we went out to talk with them, we talked among ourselves and said, look, we're not going to hear the other side. We're going to hear from the rest of the community as well. We want to hear how people are interacting, what the needs are, and how things come to be what they are. So we went out to this barn of the Guerras, Richard and Jody, and they have owned this ranch for 5 generations, cattle ranchers, who can no longer do the cows because of the various things going on down there. But they invited us into their barn. They had set it up with hospitality of wonderful panuelos and coffee, and they had invited the Border Patrol, who came to just talk to us about what it's like for them. Richard and Jody talked about how it is on the ranch, people coming through. Richard had told me about people knocking on his door, a young woman who was there in just a t-shirt, a woman who was about to give birth, about finding dead bodies on their property, about having people come up to them and say, please take me in, just give me some water. When the Border Patrol spoke with us, that's a bigger conversation for another day, but I will tell you, they are living under duress also. They have come into this and been trained to be at the border to protect our security, mostly from cartels or terrorists who might be coming here to fight against drug trafficking, and they have found themselves having to triage a humanitarian disaster. They had jail cells for very few, and then they had thousands being sent to them to be taken care of. They say they did the best that they could, and I believed them in their hearts, these men that were speaking to us that day. Our eyes and the stories we hear know that, be that as it may, the way it ended up was not very good, and people suffered terribly. Now they're not getting across anymore. They have different feelings about the wall. Some think it's not a good idea. Some think it would be a godsend. So there we are. They also have an aerostat balloon. It's like a blimp, goes straight up and takes pictures. It can see for miles, and there's a trailer there where they're watching. And that's how they keep track of the border and are watching what's going on. Yes, for immigrants trying to come across, also for the drug trafficking, and also because a lot of the immigrants that are being brought by the cartels. They are being extorted. It's human trafficking. Most of the people who are coming by in groups are human trafficking, and their situation is terrible. This is the border. Sister Norma Pimentel runs the Catholic Charities Respite Center there. It's another place where people can be useful, helping out with people who are coming through. They are much fewer now. Sometimes a dozen, sometimes 4. This is the center. This is what it looks like upstairs, where they've got supplies all over the place. And I leave you with tents. I leave you with the scene from Team Brownsville. And with people, because that's what's really going on at the border. I will tell one story before I pass it on. Simone, who is the Canon for Latin Ministries at the Cathedral in Houston, is from the Dominican Republic. He speaks some French. We went to the respite center. There was a family there from Congo, because it isn't just Latino immigrants who are coming through. This family from the Congo had been walking for a year because they come across the ocean to Brazil and then make their way by foot. There's a 10-day stretch of it that's through the jungle where you walk past the dead bodies of the people who didn't make it that far to get into Panama. Their story is amazing, but the people who have come through, these are people who are determined and strong and have been through hell, but they are not weak, and they are not coming here to get on the public dole, as we know. They are coming here to work and have a life, and nobody walks for a year to leave behind something that was better than what they're hoping to find. So on that note, I'd like to invite Melinda to come up and tell of her experience.
Thank you. I want to share the children. Tell us who you are. Oh, I'm Melinda Kmitta. Sorry, I thought you said that. Sorry about that. I want to share the stories of the children. And I want to emphasize the few that I met and how they have touched my life and how I have to live and pray for them.
Louder, please.
Oh, louder, sorry. Okay, as I was continuing to the camp, is that good? I met this girl, and she broke our heart. And we all came back and still sobs about this child. Her name was Marta. She had the body probably of a young teen, but she had the face of an old lady. And you could see the etched in her face were tears. And she touched our arm, and she hugged us. And she told us she doesn't want to be there. She wants to go. She wants school. She wants mama happy. She wants an answer. And in my heart, I had no answer. She broke my heart. She broke all our hearts. Because she doesn't know why. She can't go somewhere. Why she's there. I continued on the camp, and I met little Felipe. And he had 3 little Matchbox cars, which was his token of God to him. And he showed me each car, and he wanted me to hold them and touch them. I wear this cross, which is the cross of St. Bridget's, who was a saint, and people would come up and touch my cross. The children wear little plastic crosses around their neck on a string, and they would touch my cross, and I would touch their cross, and we would kiss our cross. But in the end, I met the woman that had this beautiful baby. Her name was Ruby, and she had a rosary on. And when she saw me, she grabbed the baby, like really tight. But then she saw my cross, and I touched hers, and she touched mine, and she let me kiss the baby. Their conditions are horrible, but the kids are clean. They got mishmash shoes, they got funny looking clothes, but in the end, before I'm an educator, and we were down there waiting to see if the food was going to come, and there was somebody donated a large bin of books, but they were covered with plastic, and the kids are ripping the plastic open to get to the books. And when they touched the books, they were like, the little girl was telling stories from the book. And they were pulling the books out. These were not toys, these were books. Because education is not there. They're trying to get an education there. So I leave you with this, to pray for Marta, to pray for Felipe, for Maria, for Lupe, so they can have an answer, so God can give them the peace and the justice that they so desperately needed. God bless you.
Good morning. My name is Olsen. And the reason that I went on the trip is because I'm a mom and a grandma. And I'm sorry, really, I was very, very concerned about the children in this community. And also, the thing I was so concerned about is, what are we saying to these people and to the world about our country? Who are we? And so that was my motivation. And I was, as the day got closer, I got really concerned about what I was going to see in the camps and how upsetting this was going to be to me. And was I going to be able to cope with what I saw and be able to process it and also take information or reactions or feelings away and then do something positive? Or was it just going to be so overwhelming? I belong to several Facebook groups. I don't know how many of you are on Facebook, but one of them is called Lawyer Moms for America, I think, or maybe Lawyer Moms for Immigration. And they describe the conditions in the camp as horrific. So in my mind, what I thought of was a war zone. Mind you, I've never been in a war zone, but that was mentally what I was thinking of. And so I was really getting anxious about what was going to happen. And in a way, it's not horrific. The way it's not horrific is children are playing, families are trying to do whatever families are doing, watching the kids, washing the dishes, whatever. So in a way, it's not. But there's this kind of overarching sense of eeriness and watchfulness. And it's because the cartels are actually in the camps. And I didn't realize that until I went there. That I knew they were on the trip, on the way, but I didn't realize they were in the camps. And you don't see a lot of men in the camps, you see mostly women and children. And that was sobering to me. I didn't see any of these people as any kind of a threat to the United States at all. What I saw was people really desperate for something better, very desperate. I also, as Nancy explained about the Border Patrol and the ranching family, that was also very interesting to me because it gives you a perspective of that area that you don't hear a lot about in the news. There are some stories about it, but it's not really talked about as much as the human drama stories. And so that was enlightening to me. It made me really realize that this problem is huge and it is complicated. It's not something simple, and that's part of the reason why I believe there hasn't been comprehensive immigration reform. Also, when I went down, excuse me, I was thinking, well, we're gonna go in there and, shovel some things and clean some things and, take some kind of direct action. And there's a place for that. But the thing that I really realized instantly is this problem can only be solved politically. It has to be addressed by public policy. And so instead of me expending my energy or money or time on sending parkas or dishware or something, my personal choice is going to be the thing that changed for me after this trip is I think political action and trying to move the dial with our leaders is what's really critical. Thank you.
I have been so impressed with the people who live there at the border. They are there for many reasons. I've had a lot of people ask me, why don't they just go home? If they can't get across the border, why can't they go home? Because they can't go home. Many of them are there because their lives have been threatened. Many are there because it's taken everything they possibly can to get there, and there's no way they can turn around and go home. So I'm so hooked on them and their beautiful children. I'm moving to Texas in the fall. I can't stand it. I gotta do it. My family doesn't need me anymore. They're all grown up. I need to be needed. Those people need me. That's it. I've said everything I need to say. I am going to make a quick trip next month, about mid-March. So I'll keep you posted. If anybody's interested in coming with me, let me know. We'll do it together.
Dee, tell them your name.
What?
Tell them your name.
Oh, okay. I'm Dee Cappelletti. Sorry about that. Thank you, boss.
I'm George Moore. I'm the one man that got to go with all these wonderful women. And I made a handout. Unfortunately, pass them out. Unfortunately, I thought I'd make 40 handouts, which means there's about 1/3 of a handout from every person here. And I really thank you for the turnout. There are more on the piano, so if you don't get one, run real fast to the piano if you think you want one. Now, Melinda told us about Marta. Marta was well described by Melinda. Marta had been in the camp for 9 days. And there is, I think, a phenomenon that we sensed in the camp that people who get settled in get almost, if you will, institutionalized, and they're accepting, and in a lot of ways they're very happy. It's the people who've been there for a few days who suddenly realize, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? And Marta looked up at me. I get to cry too. Just because you have a white chromosome doesn't mean you can't cry. Marta came up to me and said, "Puedes ayudarnos? No quiero quedarme aquí. Can you help us? I don't want to stay here." And that question, I didn't have an answer for. And since coming back, I've thought about that a lot. And ¿Cómo podemos ayudarnos? How can we help them? Well, here's a small, incomplete list. We can pray, obviously. I mean, we're Christians. We believe in the power of prayer. The individual names, yes, they're important. Pray for all the people. Stay informed. There's a lot going on in immigration and asylum law and policy in this country. To seek asylum, you have to have fear that you will be persecuted for race, religion, nationality, membership in a social group, or political opinion. Well, how do you decide who's afraid for these reasons? Well, you get to take the fear test. You get interviewed by a person who decides whether or not you're afraid for one of these reasons. To me, that's nuts. Unfortunately, as of 13 days ago, the Supreme Court has reinstated the policy of review for public trust. Now, public trust, that sounds very innocent, but if you are now trying to enter this country as an immigrant, you have to be vetted to be sure that you will not be someone who will use food stamps, Medicaid, public housing. So basically what we have going on now is a well test to be allowed to enter the country. Stay informed. Share the conversation. Share the conversation with the language of peace. Probably doesn't do any good to grab somebody by the collars and say, hey, you guys can know. Write to your congressman and your senator. I learned something very interesting down there. There was this really wonderful young, I say she's young, probably not so much young compared to some folks, but she was a lawyer who had worked worked for a particular congressman when she was young in her career. And it flabbergasted me to learn that in her opinion, the most effective way is to send postcards. They don't want to read long letters. They respond to the number of people from their constituency who want a given thing. There are opportunities to donate and to consider volunteering. And the thing that I learned that I think Maris sort of referred to in a way, and so did everyone else, that volunteering needs some organization behind it. Now, there are a number of other charities, but the three that we worked with down there, Catholic Charities of Rio Grande. This is Sister Norma Pimentel's. She is the director of the thing. That is. I hope this isn't offensive, but Sister Norma's badass. You didn't know that. She gets things done. She took on the city of McAllen. They were going to sell her a building for $1 million. She leased it for 99 years for $1. That just tells you about Sister Norma's obviously tightly hooked up. Team Brownsville, as has been pointed out, these are the folks with boots on the ground, taking the wagons across every night, feeding the people breakfast, feeding the people dinner. There are other churches who do that as well. Global Response Management is the team that runs the medical facility there, and they've got it set up, and it is humming, and it is a good thing, and deserves support. Finally, I think even if you never go down there to speak to any of these people, it imbues you to, I think, with a sense that you'll learn those things. And if you don't want to do that around here, Casa Latina has got good classes that allow you to develop a relationship with the Latin American people here. So that's all I have to say. It was a great privilege and greatly uplifting to get to go on this.
And so we have just a couple more minutes. To take a couple of questions. I just want to, first of all, ask George Moore, Maris Olsen, Melinda Kmitta, and Dee Cappelletti to stand and turn and thank them. They came down not really knowing what was going on because the itinerary kept shifting, and they were game for whatever happened. And we're a wonderful group of people to be with, and to bring back what they saw to this community is powerful witness. I thank you so much, and I thank you for your good company. The reason we went was to figure out what we would do next. So I will talk more at length about that another day, but I want to give you just a nutshell so you're knowing, is that what we're looking into is if our big churches can get together and support having literally financially support having a point person down there who is the person for our church consortium. And that person will be in relationship with the organizations down there, will be a connector, and will be feeding back information directly to us at all of our far-flung churches to light a fire under us with direct word from down there, with a direct eye toward what can we do, what is needed, and how we can be more actively involved with actually having a presence there who can work with the community down there. One of the priests down there has offered office space at his church already if we were to send someone down. So that's something, that's going to be a conversation. I don't know if that will actually happen, but that's what we're writing about and proposing going back to the group. That point person will also be someone who can put together pilgrimages and be someone who can lead our groups that might come down there from our various churches. It's something that can build our own community across the country as well, because it doesn't just have to be a group from St. Mark's is going down today. It can be there's a trip coming up in October, and there can be people from the various churches who take spots on it. And we learn so much from each other from different parts of the country. I mean, we're fortunate to be in a broad-minded congregation. Some people are in very, very conservative organizations where they have beloved people that they care about too. And so being in conversation with all of that really is effective. So that's the nutshell, but if there's anything we can answer for you before church.
Yeah, just in general, St. Mark's has been down this road before. It was called the Vietnam Resettlement Program. John Houston led this congregation through that experience, and the state acted as a major resettlement pathway. It was the only state in the country that was a resettlement pathway, just like Church World Service and all the other religious denominations. And there's no reason we can't do this again.
No,
Thank you. Yes.
my question is, we need someone to guide us with policy and how to be effective in trying to work with the government to change and develop a better immigration policy.
So keeping track of all of that is actually quite an endeavor, but there are organizations right here in our state who are sending out constant notices on, write to these guys, call these guys, here's this thing coming up.
And how do we get on those
And
lists?
so if you're interested in being on those lists, email me and I will send you the information. Maris?
Camilla Jayapal.
Yeah.
She's the person to connect with, and we should consider having her come to St. Mark.
Yeah.
She's a mover and shaker in Washington, D.C., and I think she's somebody that would really get on board with this.
And just to say that a lot of that is coming through the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network and through the Church Council of Greater Seattle. We are connected with both of those organizations, and I'm happy to let you know about mailing lists. And also, I send out things on occasion to our sanctuary list. I don't send everything because I get stuff almost every day, but sometimes I'll compile really hot things that are going on. If you want to be on the sanctuary list and you're not, send me an email. You can find me in the bulletin and online, Nancy Ross. All right. Well, on that note, may I say blessings to everybody for all your care. It is a privilege to be a part of this congregation, and we are going to keep getting more traction in this work. And I hope that when we put the call out for it, we will see all of you there. Thank you very much.